So when it comes to mystery in media, there's no question to how difficult it can be. You never want to over-reveal to the point where the work seems predictable. But you also don't want to under-deliver and have the audience lose retention. A great example is Twin Peaks. The mystery of Laura Palmer was undoubtedly one of the most popular in television history, leading to that popular catchline, "Who killed Laura Palmer?" A mystery that director David Lynch never wanted to solve, and once it did, the show sank in the later half of the second season. Well, this isn't a video on Twin Peaks, but ironically, it is how I discovered the show I am here to discuss today, an EPIX original show called From. How I actually discovered this show was from an article that stated, "If you like Twin Peaks, then you'll love From," or something like that. I don't remember verbatim, but that was enough for me to check it out. I was so infatuated by Twin Peaks, I even visited the town earlier this year. Now, after finishing the first 2 seasons of From, I can say with a great deal of certainty that the show is very different from Twin Peaks. But that is more to its benefit. It is more grounded and serious, lacking the quirky characters of Twin Peaks, which is perfect for this show. For this essay, I want to discuss the pilot and the nuanced steps it takes in introducing the world, setting, and characters while showcasing some incredible acting, writing, and cinematography. The pilot episode is called Long Day's Journey. Now, one thing I didn't do when I started this show was any research as to the plot, which in a way proved beneficial. In the first minute, as our protagonist is ringing a bell through the derelict city, we see everyone heading home, which is further elaborated in the diner when the waitress tells the patrons it's time to go, which is sort of a strange thing to tell customers. The scene continues as we follow Boyd through the city, that's our protagonist, where he makes sure everyone heads home, including a young girl who was denied extra time to play. Something is going to happen. This is all further induced with one of my favorite songs since Mafia 3, "We Gotta Get Out of This Place" by the Animals. Besides the great rhythm and vocalists, the song reiterates the necessity for departure. We gotta get out of this place if it's the last thing we ever do. The entire scene features great shots, my favorite being the upside down car in a pool. Small details add to big moments. We finally get our first interaction between 3 characters, building a sense of community. A great use of imagery followed by a scene of Boyd overlooking Colony House, where his estranged son Ellis resides. We then get a shot of Boyd entering the police station with a sign that reads, "Nights Without Incident, 96. The first shot of the intro does a great job of establishing an ominous feeling. The second part of the intro features the actual threat. Following a sequence of events with a drunk father who ends up sleeping through the night, which I guess leaves the family defenseless. We follow Frank's family as night approaches. As the little girl is praying, we hear a knock. Praise to the audio team, the sound of the knocking and the witch-like voice really sets the scene. It gets a bit cheesy as the mom makes it upstairs in plenty of time to witness the event. The grandmother appeals to the girl, and once the little girl opens the window, the grandmother goes from creepy old lady to creepy old monster, instantaneously, and the scene ends. But later in the show, we see the bodies of the mom and the daughter, and we notice that these monsters inflict incredible amount of damage, from the insides to the outsides. We can assume that this is done out of pleasure. It did a fine job in establishing the threat, although albeit a bit rushed comparatively to how we see the monsters for most of the series. Now, this is more of an opinion in hindsight, but in the series we find out that these monsters are more like stalkers who enjoy playing with their prey through mental gymnastics. For me, an opening of a show and its theme song sets a precedent for what we should expect. I'm used to television shows that tend to have this song at the start. It was sort of an introduction to that world. I'm currently watching The Sopranos, and the theme didn't initially grow on me. But during season 2, once I was situated in the setting, I noticed the introduction does a banger job in bringing you into the world and into our protagonist's psyche. What seems like a mundane drive to Jersey at the start changes when you are aware of the protagonist as the kingpin of Newark. For From, the intro doesn't start until about 5 minutes in. So when I listen to the intro, which is accompanied by a great rendition of Que Sera Sera by the Pixies, the original song has more of a childhood innocence, whereas the Pixies rendition is brooding and dark. The lyrics can also be constructed as relevant to the series as a whole. Whatever will be, will be. Further adding to the mystery and appealing to our trust as we follow this story. The intro is also cut with images of a child's coloring sketches, which I consider a theme in the show, and is elaborated a bit more in the post-intro. Typically as a child, fear derives from what we don't know, like the scary monster under the bed. The intro does a great deal of foreshadowing, while still managing to retain a great deal of ambiguity. After the intro, when the show officially kicks into gear, we as the audience are aware of the danger that occurs at night, and we are introduced to the family in the RV. A quick exchange in this RV helps us get an idea of the characters we are introduced to. The caring but coddling mom, the dad who seems to be at odds with his wife, the teenage daughter who is definitely at odds with her mother, and the young innocent son. In fact, the scene starts with a story being told through finger puppets. I mentioned earlier how the introduction plays with a childhood-like theme. This scene perfectly ties into it by having a story told through finger puppets. The story seems to be based around a fable involving a castle. When Julie tells it, she ends the story with a death. This isn't delivered with malicious intent, but only because Julie is a typical young teenager. Meanwhile in town, and right on cue, we continue with the next morning, where Frank awakens from his drunken bender, and as he approaches the house, he is confronted by Boyd. The series is filled with fantastic performers, but Harold, who in this one pilot establishes his character extremely well, and I would be remiss to mention how likable he is throughout the entire series. In this scene, he appears the leader that this town needs. While showing aggression toward Frank, he also shows remorse for the family, and especially the child. It cannot be an easy balance. As we return to the RV, we experience a cycle that sets the precedent for everyone's collective experience when entering the town. As the family continues on the road, they notice a large tree in the path. This leads to a sequence of events where a group of crows follow shortly after. It creates an uneasiness, and prompts an interesting conversation with Julia and Tabitha, where Julie states a group of crows is called a murder, and Tabitha, in order to calm her son, she says that they look like ravens, and a group of ravens is called an unkindness, attempting to throw shade at Julie. The family decides to find another way around. Earlier in the prelude, we saw Boyd looking over a large house. In this scene, although not described through exposition, we enter Colony House. Where the town allows their residents to have their own houses and spaces, Colony House is more of an internal community, and it seems to have some tension with the town, but nothing combative. We meet Donna, who is portrayed by Elizabeth Saunders, who in my opinion is phenomenal in the show, and is responsible for some of my favorite scenes solely because of her ability to legitimize and bring such powerful testimony throughout the entire series. This particular video is focusing on the pilot, and how it is able to keep intrigue and raise the stakes throughout, but in episode 2, she delivers a great monologue that makes it worth continuing. Colony House is also home of Ellis. Now this hunk of man is the son of Boyd, and the two are certainly at odds. The show does a lot of showing and not telling, which I love. It relies a lot on performance and delivery of certain lines. Once again, good casting throughout the show. Boyd makes Ellis aware of his recent death in the city, and implores him to go to the funeral. Interesting to this scene, it seems like someone is being comforted in the background, showing the advantage to having a community house. By now, we as the audience are aware of the impending danger, and in hindsight, this scene gives me such a joy. Not because I'm eager to see something bad occur, but rather I was eager to see how the town will react. Tabitha throws a fit after realizing they've been going on the same road over and over again. The cell phones are out and the family is lost. This is perfectly balanced with Jim, who seems to be a level-headed and rational type of person. The family decides to head to town for directions and notices how all the cars seem to have flat tires.
Something is wrong here. Dead giveaway.
We see Sarah, who visually is much different than she was in the intro, kind of a bit creepy as she watches the family over and over again as they stumble upon the funeral, where we see Donna and Father Cauchi. Boyd reminds all the citizens that they've all been in this situation before. He has more of a gentle approach. Where the family seems a bit creeped out by the situation and all the citizens looking at them, Jim seems reassured by Boyd and continues on his path. As we return to the RV, we are given the answer to why all the tires are flat. Boyd chooses to have the circumstances revealed rather than explained. Perhaps the actual explanation of every night we have monsters that look like people that are trying to kill and eat us proves to be ineffective, so he allows them to continue the cycle. Then eventually he incapacitates their vehicle. So once the car is incapacitated, the family would be more receptive to the strange behavior. Unfortunately for our family, things are about to get a lot worse. On the path, another car seemingly spawns in front of them, causing a collision to the RV. At this point in my intensity meter, I'm a solid 7. In the car are two guys who seem to be high off of drugs. One manages to walk away and is able to locate Boyd and Kenny. This is where Boyd makes a run and discovers the RV has been off-roaded. Boyd is basically a superhero and takes it upon himself to rescue the family. Boyd for president. Seriously. In the busy sequence of events, we return to the hospital to care for the injured dude, and a community call for action is in effect. Throughout all of this, the looming fear of night begins to set in. At this point, we as the audience are aware of the danger. We are also aware of the stakes, and following the collision, Boyd's character rapidly moves into gear. In this moment, we see how effective he is as a leader. Quickly leaping into action, he subdues the guy who is way too high to have any idea as to what's in store. Boyd quickly helps the family. He's able to alleviate the trauma from the car crash. Aware that he is quickly losing time, Boyd uses reason to appeal to Jim. A solid strategy, giving us, the audience, a general idea of the relationship between the two men. Unfortunately, stakes continue to rise, and we find out the boy is impaled by a table leg. The pilot does a great job in not overwhelming the audience, but maintaining a stressful scenario. Eventually, the rest of the community comes to assist Boyd by getting the girls to safety. Despite pleas by Tabitha, who is hesitant to leave her son, Jim and Boyd agree it's the best choice. And Christy, who is established earlier as a compassionate character, is also a badass, and decides to attempt to save the boy, despite the uncertainty of their safety. We know the talismans are able to protect the homes, however, Boyd makes it clear he has never tried it with an RV, or any sort of vehicle. He also chooses to refrain from telling Jim, perhaps sticking to his show don't tell approach we saw earlier in the episode. Despite being in a small scene with Boyd, we see Jim can be pragmatic, but now, nighttime is coming. As we reach our finale, we see our family split in two. We have culminated to this final moment. The great stoic Hakaru of Rhodes once said, "Cease to hope and you will cease to fear." In order for us to fear something, which is different from being scared, we have to believe in the danger, and we have to want our characters to survive. From perfectly balances this mythology, and a literal storm begins to brew. Boyd, Jim, Chrissy, and the young boy are in the RV. The tension further elaborated by the camera angle, which creates quite a claustrophobic scene. As Boyd covers up the RV, he delivers the perfect line.
What are you doing?
I am, doing my best to keep the RV safe.
And we close the episode with a shot of all the monsters approaching. My friends, I just want to say thank you guys for checking my video out. Please leave a like, also leave some comments. I do plan on doing a little bit more content on From, especially toward the second season, which I felt had a lot more issues comparatively to the first. My channel mainly focuses on video essays around media, which can include television, books, movies, music, even paintings, whatever I feel, whatever I'm able to derive a meaning from. So please continue watching if you do like the content, and thank you guys so much. Take care.